I'm Daphne, and this is my first sketchbook tour. I started this sketchbook in October 2021, and we've finished the last illustration yesterday, so it was the 3rd of December. So this one took about, it's a moleskine sketchbook, and it took about a year and a half. So yeah, let's get started. On the cover, I like to decorate with a lot of like different stickers. These are mine, and this one was a Patreon sticker that I created. This is from Apple Cheeks, and these two are from Cheyenne Barton. And this one's from, I think her name's Tina. She's on Instagram, and she likes to draw these like grumpy girls. So let's get started. This was something that I kept in here. This was actually my first Patreon botanical study, and it was very fun. It was from January this year. So yeah, put that to the side. In case of loss, please return Daphne Shen. And I wrote this on the 24th of September. The first page, I don't like drawing on the first page. So here we have a plant, these two fern cuttings that I think I got on a hike, and just tape them down with washi tape to add some green into the sketchbook, and also to just have fun and use them as references going forward. I really love the shape of this maidenhair fern, and I don't think I've ever drawn it before, but I want to. But yeah, let's move on to like the actual illustrations. Initially started this for the drawing challenge, the Witch Garden drawing challenge that I did in 2021, and because I wanted to test kind of how this paper would interact with the ink pens. I use a mix of technical pens and fountain pens. So the ones that I use the most are the Wort Rapidographs and Isographs, and also my trusty TWSBI Eco EF nib in, this one was pale pink. I'm not sure if it's a limited edition, but anyways. So these are the pens that I use the most, and I wanted to see how they interacted. So here are like swatches of my most used nib sizes. This sketchbook handles ink very well, and you'll see later on. But yeah, so this was the start of the Witch Garden challenge. We started off with elderberry. I actually still really like this piece. So if we focus on like the illustration above, like I really learned, like it was here when I started doing the small shadings for like the leaves to add more details. You can see that it's still kind of fairly refined to like fairly limited to like the edges here. But I really like how I shaded the berries. It was just fun to use shading techniques to create like dimension. And then that was the month that I started working on like lettering again. But this was more of a trying to figure out how I'd like to use serif text and how to write it. But yeah, it was a very good start to October. And lavender was one I actually struggled with, because I don't know, maybe I'll have better luck now trying it again, but back then it was the way that these buds were so simple, and because lavender is kind of, the signature is the purple color, but I was doing it in black and white, so I struggled with this one. It's not my favorite, but I like how I use the black for like the stems to add more dimension. But overall, I feel like this piece was a bit too simple for my style. Sage was one that I really liked. I think I loved how there was a bunch of it, but then it also spanned out to create more body on the top, and then it was balanced out with like the ribbon at the bottom. And then your usual stars. I really loved adding stars to my illustrations. And so, funny story, I love how the line variation in these stars are, and it wasn't initially supposed to be like this. They were initially supposed to be like very monolined, because that was kind of how I liked my illustrations to look last year. But then the lines were skipping because I ran out of ink, and then I went over them again, and it was kind of uneven. And I just ended up really liking that. Next on, Foxglove, Queen of the Night. I think I'm going to go over like the front pages fairly quickly, just because they're more or less the same theme. But Foxglove, for this one, I want to redo this because I don't think, like, I wasn't really super happy with this piece, which was a shame, because I love the way I love drawing foxgloves, but it was just not well planned out. This was kind of when I started using like smaller nibs to color in larger spaces, and I realized I really like doing that because the texture is so lovely. You can kind of see like the white and then how it overlaps. So yeah, Queen of the Night, one of my favorite illustrations even now. I just love the way that it looks, it blooms, it's majestic. And yeah. Eucalyptus, yeah, again, see, these are the small, using a very small nib. I think this was 02 to color this in. Love how it looks, and I love how delicate the lines are to kind of create the shadings. Morel Mushrooms, and one of my favorite. You can also see the unevenness, or like the line variation in the stars, which is really fun. Bleeding Hearts, always fun to draw. I think now it could be executed better, but I think that that's how it always is when you kind of go back and look at your own work. You always see like what could be done better. But overall, there's a dog barking outside. Should close the window. Poppy, still one of my favorite flowers to draw. One of my favorite illustrations. I really love this like galaxy blob. So this page was, this was when I struggled. Like Lavender, it was very simple. Like Time is very simple in the way that it's formed in lines. And I'm basically used to a lot of things going on in my illustrations, as you can tell. So this one I really struggled with. On this page, it was a lot of different layouts on how I wanted to use the branches. And that was kind of like my first mistake page, quote unquote, mistake page. And I remember at the time I was like really frustrated with this page because I felt like it wasn't perfect enough. But yeah, I like seeing how, like looking back, I really like seeing how my thought process was. I was trying things out, different angles. But yeah. Death Cap, always fun to draw, and I really like these big stars kind of highlighting and contrasting to like the roundness of the death caps. Yeah, I think this was kind of when I was like experimenting with a lot of shading, how I could use it without being overwhelming. And then there was cross hatching here, which I only did for a while, I think. I don't know why I don't do cross hatching that much. Interesting. But yeah, Mint, I really like how I drew this leaf. Like, most of the time when I draw leaves, it's always to the sides. But this one kind of came over the stem, which I really liked how I did that. It was dark colored in stars, which I think was a very good choice because, like, all the leaves here are fairly simple. So, yeah. Buttercup, Lily of the Valley. This one I love how all the lines and then the stems flow to create like this kind of wildflower bloom. But yeah, Mugwort. I really like this one. I think it was fun to kind of have two on the page interact with the text here. But yeah, I want to see, a lot of these are plants that I've never seen in real life, and I was working off of reference photos. So yeah, all of these plants I want to see IRL. Hogweed, I really like this one. I think I had a tough time trying to figure out how to draw these, like the flowers of hogweeds, which is basically white and fluffy. And then I think I would draw them differently now. But I really like how I worked with the ink at this time. Also, very weird, but I love the lettering on this hogweed. I think it's probably the best lettering that I've did in this series. But yeah. Aster, Dandelion, these are two pages that I'm not super happy with. I don't know why. I think the Dandelion, I didn't love the way that this center was formed because it's so, like, the line is there. And then Aster, like, all these, the rounds and the dots and then all the little, flingy bits kind of give me a bit of claustrophobia. But yeah, it was, you win some, you lose some. Yeah, that was fun. St. John's Wort. I love these flowers. Again, haven't seen them in real life, but I love how yellow they are and how bright they are. Marigold is one that I'm also very proud of. I don't think I fully registered how hard it would be to draw when I included this, and then I remember when I was sketching this and I was like, what did I do? Because it's a bunch of like small ribbons, and this one I didn't do any like detail shading, which I think was a good choice because all the lines are really complicated. And then there's this little ribbon. It's a very torn ribbon. I just really like how this piece looks. Yeah, Veal Lady, very fun, very yummy. And then the Starburst is also just fun to draw. Lupin. Yeah, so for this moon, it was done with, I think, the TWSBI, so the fountain pen, which has a much thicker nib compared to, like, the fine liners. And you can see how, like, how much darker it is, especially if you compare it with, like, the Veal Lady, which was done here in the 02 nib, and then I could use it to create more shading. So that's kind of a contrast of what nib sizes can do in terms of ink drawings. Yeah. I think we're 2/3 almost done with this. So this is it. I don't know how to pronounce this, but this was fun to draw. I like drawing these little like spiky bits, but chamomile is one of my favorites. I turned it into a sticker. I just love how round they are. And then this one I did the dotted center technique. That takes forever, but I just love the effect of it. This is one of my favorites. I also like how the leaves are, like they're less full compared to that, and they're spiky, but they're fun. Deadly Nightshade, love the illustration. Think the text could be laid out better. But yeah, this I want to draw in color one day because I think it would just be fun. Also, I always loved the way this thing looks. It looks so much like a hummingbird, and it was just fun. Toadstool, of course we love toadstools. It's a good mushroom. And yeah. It's done. Wolfsbane, one of my favorite flowers to draw. They look like little dolphins on top, which I love. I also ended up doing Wolfsbane again this year for my botanical studies on Patreon as well. And this is kind of the first time I drew it and fell in love with it. I think towards the end, if you compare it with like the front, in the beginning I used a lot of like finer nibs, but in the end I was just so done and I wanted to use so I used the fountain pen a lot more, which has a thicker nib, and the lines are much bolder. There's less shading as well. At this point I just wanted it to be done, which I think is a shame. Like, I think a lot of these illustrations would be great if I spent more time on it. But yeah. Stinging Nettle, it's fairly standard. I remember drawing this and thinking, like, why did I pick such a boring plant? And then the last one, Jack-o'-lantern Mushroom. Always fun to draw. My favorite bit is how I use the lettering to kind of go along the lines. But yeah, I think this is the one where the lettering is most incorporated into the illustration. And I'm very proud of that. So yeah, that was the end of the Witch Garden Drawing Challenge. And at this point, I kind of wanted a break from illustration, but I really loved how this sketchbook started out. But it also gave the illusion that it created this idea that all of my pages needed to be perfect and final illustrations, which you can kind of see transform as through the rest of this sketchbook. But yeah, that was kind of the pressure that I had for a while, that it wasn't a sketchbook, it was a final illustration piece, which is not how I ended up using this rest of the sketchbook, and I'm very happy with. But yeah, so after I did this, I was pretty much burned out and stopped drawing for a while. So you can kind of see this page was in December, so it was a month break. But here I was trying to figure something out. I think it was just a lot of different layout sketches, and I wasn't really happy with any of them. I didn't like how it looked, so this was like a leaf fell off my Monstera, and I just pasted it here to kind of cover it up. But this also served as an inspiration later on for one of my stamps. But yeah, this was kind of getting back in the groove of drawing, and drawing a small bouquet. At this point, I really like drawing these like vintage ribbons, torn ribbons. And this was just a small message to myself, because I was burned out at this point. And then this was kind of the year, like last December, my mental state was at a horrible stage. This was just a small reminder that, you know, no matter how things are, it'll be okay. Yeah. So this piece, I am obsessed with my Monstera. It's still one of my favorite plants. And I just wanted to do something, I think, yeah, so I borrowed this frame from from this layout. And I borrowed it to use here. And again, it was the vintage like ribbon vibe that I was obsessed with here. Monstera. This was actually, I referenced my own plant. So I feel like the leaves, I love how I drew the leaves on this one. It's much more organic and less arranged, which was just fun to do. This was done December 7th. I was very liberal with dating my page, like illustrations. Most of these don't have any. But yeah, this was the first color illustration. This was when I got my first Posca paint markers, and I was very excited to use them because of all the hype around them. Again, the vintage kind of ribbon look, and I just like drawing mushrooms. So the base color for these are all Posca markers, and then I went in with color pencil over the top. I remember finishing this piece at the time and not being super happy with it, but also not being indifferent to it. I think it was just different. But I'm really glad that I tried this because it kind of gave me the courage to try more colored illustrations as well. Again, another leaf cutting. This was fern cutting. I think I got this on a hike in the mountains. I just love kind of how everything is. This was another postcard illustration. Oh my gosh, I hated this so much. Because the portion isn't right. It isn't great, but one thing I do love about it is, so if you can kind of see here, the way I used shading was, it was the same color, but in like a darker hue. Whereas here, I started using purples to shade. And I think that's the first time I did that, but hate this page, love this area. But you win some, you lose some. I think I had to go through this phase to kind of figure out how I like to use color. So yeah, I'm glad that I experimented, and I don't think you're supposed to love everything you draw. But yeah. Oh, I love this one. I think I was trying to make up for all the color experiments that I was doing before, and then I came back to two of my favorite things, which is ink and also sunflowers. I just love drawing big sunflowers. And then for this one, it was the same dotted technique. This was kind of the exclusive way that I used to draw like flower centers. And it's basically just composed of a million dots. I think I usually use like 3-4 different nib sizes. Basically, there aren't any lines in there. But other than this one was a bit funky because it didn't look right. But yeah, I love using dots to kind of create it. And it took forever to color in this background as well. Use the white Posca markers for the stars. But yeah, this is still one of my favorite illustrations, and I think it was the first one that was, you know, that kind of ignored the page line here, which was fun. Yeah. Yeah, this was kind of, again, all the swatches of all the Posca markers I thought at the time, and this was kind of also when I brought out my silhouette to kind of prepare for creating Patreon. It's my first silhouette sticker, which is fun. And so this Monstera cutting served as an inspiration, and it came out to be this stamp, which is now on all my envelopes. Very good choice. Yeah, this was kind of when I was, you can kind of see for the next couple pages, I was really stuck with how I wanted to use this sketchbook because I was frustrated that I didn't have any full illustration ideas. And I was kind of struggling with what my sketchbook should look like. Should it be of complete pages, or are like sketches like these okay? And I think I was struggling at the time. So basically, here were a lot of different sketches because I wanted to do something that was inspired by Ivy because of Taylor Swift's song. And I was doing a lot of different sketches here. And like, I just felt like I needed to use plant cuttings to cover up the sketches because it wasn't perfect. And then I did this sketch on Ivy. I finished this illustration digitally. I'll share here. But yeah, this was when I was really struggling with what a sketchbook should look like and how complete it should be. But I was really tired and stuck at this point. But yeah. This was also a study page, I think that, so basically it's called a study on Peony. So I was just doing a lot of different studies, like different phases of what the peony was like, and then different ways to kind of illustrate the centers. Some I inked, some I didn't. So yeah, again, this was kind of in December, I think. Yeah, based on a plant cutting I took back from Zhongpusan. See previous page for the cutting. It was not in the, oh, here. And it's a weed. I wasn't sure what it was, but I just really love the shape of this thing. And then I just drew it here. And these are plant cuttings from a hike up in Sheets, which is like, I think, West Taipei. And it was on Christmas Day, and my favorite is this one. This one is Taiwan Gaosanju. It's a species native to Taiwan. And I just love how the leaf is a heart-shaped. So yeah, at this point I was not loving my sketchbook and basically using it as a plant cutting holder at that point. So these are sketches that I did when I was watching Hilda on Netflix. And this was like an onion dude that was really cute. I really like this dude. My favorite is this, I think he's called Twig. It's like this fox cat thing. It was just fun to do everything in like a very different style as well. And this is hilarious, but I was watching the show and then I referenced this plant, but the point is the grass underneath, because this is kind of when I figured out, oh, this is how I can draw grass. So yeah, taking inspiration from that. So basically I wanted to do a round illustration, and then the idea was kind of split. I wanted it to split in between. So this was like a lotus illustration, but I don't know why I never inked it. I just think that I wasn't feeling it. I was forcing illustrations at this point, and I just didn't finish it. But yeah, again, kind of a lot of different sketches underneath, just trying to force myself to draw. And then I covered that up again. This was tape from one of my orders from, I'll insert the artist's name over here, but yeah, she does a lot of detail work as well, which I love. This was also a Peony study that basically I was trying to use the shape of the ruffles and the center to force myself back into illustration. But I went through a very long traditional art slump, and none of these illustrations are ones that I love, but I really like pushing myself to do them because I was just trying out like different shading techniques here, and then the kind of arrangement of the leaves. But yeah, this one I think was a couple months later already. Ooh, there we go, a couple months later, and this was kind of when I was trying to do more color in my digital illustrations, and I wanted to see if I could replicate that in traditional artwork. So this page was kind of contrast between black and white and also colored, and at this point I was really unsure of how to color things, and this was one thing I was trying out. So basically it was like small sections of similar colors, or colors in like the same range. And I feel like it was a lot more abstract. It's not my favorite way to color, but it's also very interesting to look at as well. This was a reference from one of my plants. Yeah, again, uninspired, but it was basically trying a very more color block, simplistic kind of illustration to kind of basically forcing myself to try new things. But yeah, at this point, I was just super done with this sketchbook, and like, I wasn't sure if I would ever touch like pen and paper again, because every time I picked up the sketchbook I was just annoyed. But yeah, and then here again it was kind of because I was forcing myself to do so many things and I wanted to try color, so I did this illustration with color pencils. It was no line work. I went in with no clue what I wanted to do, and it was just a very messy sketch, and this message to tell me to be gentle with myself. I think that that's a good reminder to have. Yeah, and then this was also, so I had gladiolus as one of my Patreon studies, botanical studies, and I already done it digitally at this point, but I wanted to see if I could do it traditionally again. That idea that I should be working with pen and paper, which is what I started with. This was kind of okay because I did it digitally first, and this was basically kind of copying that over to like traditional. But yeah, it was experimenting. Again, hibiscus, like I wanted to split the page into two. I have this, now that I'm looking back, I have this idea of splitting things into two. We have it here as well, and then here with the lotus thing. But I really like splitting things into two for that contrast. Hibiscus, it's always fun to draw. I really like drawing flowers that kind of have this like cone shape where it kind of goes in. So kind of like this area. But yeah. And this was my first page of the soulless creatures. The soulless is a name that my friend Jay came up with. And this was the first character. He's called Dumbbird. And at this point, the soulless family was just Dumbbird and this very blank cat, which later turned into the Void. And then this has since expanded. But I really like this page. I think this was the first time that I had fun in my sketchbook since like the start of the sketchbook. So it was just a nice change. My favorite is this one, kind of little butt sticking out. I love the head tilt here. Yeah, it was fun kind of experimenting with the flow of things. And yeah. Here, me trying to incorporate the soulless into illustrations. And these were like ghost soulless. I really like. These antlers were kind of stolen from the idea of Twig from Hilda. And yeah, I was trying roses. Roses, for some reason, I can't draw. I don't know how to draw, so I was doing like a rose sketch. And then I inked the outline first, and I just ended up getting really tired of it and didn't want to do it. So we moved on. But yeah. Oh, I really like this page. This was a page that I was super proud of. And it was basically a study of all the different leaf shapes in like common weeds or like common flowers, ones that would be overlooked. And yeah, this was a great shape. I love the shape, like the roundness, but the jagged edges of this one, which is geranium. Yeah, and then I love a good dandelion leaf, and I also really like this fold in the daisy leaves here. I just love how organic these folds are. Yeah. Again, trying with color. This was a study that I did for the Tulip botanical study that I did for Patreon, and I did it here traditionally. This was inked with like one of my ballpoint pens, and here I was trying color. And it was a lot easier this time because I had already colored it in Procreate first, and I was basically referencing that to kind of use here. This one was Hawthorne, and again, inspired by Taylor Swift lyrics. I wanted to do something with it. So I created this sketch. And I just felt like there was too much going on, so I recreated it again in Procreate. And this was back to using a very small nib to kind of shade in all the colors to create that dimension. Yeah. Again, Tulip here did the outline, was done with it. Did not like the page, so I used little cards from my friend Leanne to kind of tape over the pages. This was a page that was basically, I think this was done in April or May. Basically, I was trying to do some like smaller illustrations for fun. So these are also very different style. I was not fond of that page, so again used my friend Leanne's beautiful illustrations to cover it up. But yeah. So this was already in April, and I was trying new things, Poppy, and then I did this color illustration. I actually really like this. I think this was the first colored piece that I was like truly happy with. Although next time I probably would have colored before inking, so like these lines wouldn't get overlapped. But I really like how this page turned out, especially the contrast between the black here and then the colors. And this was just fun to kind of create. And then also this section here. I just love how it's like a little dress kind of popping out. Back to the dotted center technique, which is just always fun. And also I really like how gentle and almost innocent this page looks. I think it's just the stems are a lot thicker. But yeah. This was the first completed ink illustration in a very long time. I was having a sketchbook phase around this time. This was the 18th of April. I saw this quote online of how writing is essentially creating magic. And I just like that to go with this. Yeah. Again, this was me experimenting with color pencils, trying to figure out how I like to color and how to combine them with ink. And I like to use like flowers or subjects that I'm familiar with. In this case, it was sunflowers. Yeah, this was in April, right? This was done in November, like end of October, early November this year. So there was like a 7-month break in between. And again, it was just sunflower, something I'm very familiar with, that I'm very comfortable with drawing. And I just wanted to try out different coloring techniques and also inking techniques. So for this one, I used the Pilot Sign pen. It's kind of a flex nib pen, which is very different from all the other nibs that I've used before. So the lines were much bolder, but there was variation. And then I like to use the dotted technique. My favorite place for this one is the center, where it's all brown, but then for the edges, for extra shading, I used purple, which I just thought was fun. And this was kind of when I was digitally already using like contrasting colors or like different colors to add shadows. So it was fun doing that traditionally as well. And this was kind of a page of random sketches and doodles I never finished. So again, fern and plant cuttings. This was just before the Animal Crossing. This was just after the Animal Crossing update was released, and all the gyroids were just super fun to draw. And then this was kind of back doing all the plant studies, references, a lot of sketches that were based on the cuttings before. This was also done with a brush pen, which I actually really like the texture of. I really like doing this just because it created more of that line variation that was used to in digital illustration already. And like the stars are much rounder compared to before, which is just fun. These are pages. So this is kind of when I started being a lot more creative, a lot more free, a lot more fun in the sketchbook. I was less worried about it being perfect. And I think that really inspired me because like basically the rest of this I did in a month. Well, this was done over a span of like a year. But yeah. So this was a brush pen. I was having a lot more fun. These were 2 illustrations that I did with glass pens. My first experiments into it. So it was just a lot of fun to do. I just always love drawing jars and then adding stars. Most of these are done, some of these are done with a sketch. Most of them are done without. And then just seeing like the color variation. I used 2 to 3 different inks in this one. So like these are more blue-green, this one's more blue. That one's, I think there's also like that deep green in here. It's just fun. This was done also with I think walnut ink and also brown fountain pen ink. And it was just fun to do. I love using glass pens for like these little dots. I think it's just adds a certain je ne sais quoi. Can't believe I said that. A certain vibe to it. But yeah, this was a fun illustration. And then yeah. So all these pages getting like super messy kind of subconsciously allowed me to be more fun with the illustration, with the pages, and just kind of treat it as a practice page and not a final piece. Yeah, this page was my mushroom illustration. I really loved this. I did do sketches for all of them. I still can't really draw without doing any sketching beforehand, but it was just fun to kind of play around with the different to how to use glass pens, everything overlapping, and just not being as careful, I think. That was really liberating on how I used the pencil. Like, here things are smudged, and I didn't really fret it that much, because I had fun. And I got to try new things and experiment. And at the end of the day, that's kind of all you need to kind of push forward. Like, I was less worried about the shading techniques looking perfect and more about what if I did this? What if I tried this? But yeah, this was one of my favorite pages. And yeah, I think underneath there was a lot of ink spillage on this page. So this page initially was blank, but then I taped also this sketch that I did elsewhere here as well. It was a mix of kind of experimenting with, like, this was back using the technical pens and then just pure color pencils over here, trying to create all the different shading techniques, having more fun, trying new things, and then using a brush pen for like all the leaves. So this was a very experimental piece that just felt right being here. And then, yeah, this page was basically a lot of fun mugs and fun jars, which is always great. And I wanted to pick up my Poscas again to kind of try it out. I still think that I don't know how to use them. We gotta experiment, and I learned a lot of things. For example, I really like this teacup and wish that I had it in real life. And also this jar, which kind of looks like an acorn on top. But yeah, I don't know how you would drink with the teacup though. Wouldn't all the water come out from the side? And then here was basically a toad sketch in the umbrella. This was kind of referenced off a Japanese illustrator who does these like comic squares, and then the way that she draws umbrellas I really love. So this was kind of using her as a reference to kind of try things out. For this page, the black lines were done with the Tombow brush pen, which is a much larger size compared to the Pentel Sign pens. So this is the Pentel Sign pen. The nib is like relatively smaller, whereas the Tombow brush pens, this isn't black, but you can kind of see it's much larger. It's much more flexible. So this one was basically trying to see how well I could control the pressure. And I think I did pretty good for a first time. I want to draw this Bulbasaur again because I just love Bulbasaur. And then just toads. Like, I didn't draw the head for this one, but I love how the leg is kind of just like plopping there. This was an illustration based on one of my plant cuttings. It's for this, the Mini Monstera, because I can't pronounce the Latin name. And it was just having fun. For this one, I think, no it wasn't. Yeah, it was basically, this one I think was just watercolor underneath. And then this was all watercolor. And then just layering color pencil over it and Posca pen markers and also the brush pen. And I just had a lot of fun just trying new mediums, experimenting how color pencils will lay on top of watercolors, what watercolors I liked. This was also a very just having fun page. So for these, I used the base color with these Muji markers. So these Muji markers are very vibrant in color, but they're also very bold colors, and they're not really in the color tone that I use, but I just wanted to see if I could have fun with them. And I drew basically a bunch of different leaf shapes, and then used the colors to kind of lay down different base colors underneath, and then just had fun with my color pencils. And these are not like natural colors for leaves, which is something that I also kind of experimented with, because despite them not looking very realistic, I tended to stick to a very natural color palette. But this was just fun. It pushed me out of my comfort zone, and this is actually one of my favorite pages, despite it being only a study. But yeah, I just had fun with this page and the colors. It's just very nice to look at, very happy to look at. And it reminds me that, you know, have fun with art. This page was a recreation of the glass pen page, because I really like how this illustration was and I wanted to try it again. And it was also a lot of experimenting with like color pencils and then also Poscas, and just shading. And there were pros and cons. Like, I just felt like there's too much going on here with the color pencils and also the Posca white reflection, but then also the black. But you win some, you lose some. And it was fun to experiment with. I really love the red kind of gradienting into the yellow as well. And the blue. I love using blue to like shadow greens. Yeah. Then another experiment page. This page was also done in watercolor. And then it was just the leaves. And then for this one, this was the first time, I think. Yeah, I bought a blue brush pen. Again, another Pentel Sign pen in blue to kind of see if I could use it. I wanted something that was less harsh than a black. And I really like how it turned out. I think the contrast between the lines here and also the colored leaves was it was a good contrast. And here was kind of when I started using red. I experimented with using red to kind of color, to create shadows, which is fun. I say that very unconvincingly, but it was actually fun. It was a whim. I was like, what if I use this red? And yeah. So for this page, I want to recreate this page again, because I actually really love how kind of this area turned out. Okay, so yeah, okay, for this one, what was different was, so the base colors for this were laid down with alcohol ink markers. This was a Copic, and the green wasn't a Copic, but it was also alcohol marker, and I think this was kind of just me experimenting with how colored pencils would work with that as well. And yeah, so here it was kind of the ink kind of bled through to the other side, so I covered it up. I really like this page. So this was also a leaf study that I did, and I sketched out with pencil first, and then for the colors, you can see kind of from here, it was also alcohol markers. So these are the two markers that I have, the alcohol ink markers. This one's the, what's it called, pale pea green. This one's pea green from Chroma, and this one's the Copic Y75. Well, no, Y35. Has a brush nib. Both of them have a brush nib and a chisel nib. And for this one, I kind of laid down the colors first with these two markers, and then went in with colored pencil over the top. This was kind of this was a very lineless look. I think it was the first time I did such a lineless look, but I really like how it turned out. So much so that I turned it into a little sticker for Patreon. And yeah, it was just fun to do all these studies. I didn't realize that these studies would end up being one of my favorite. Yeah. So this was initially, I didn't want to do anything on this page. This was the swatches of the new pencils that I bought. But I also wanted to try more lettering techniques as well. Stay magical is something that I like to tell people because I think everyone has a bit of magic in them. So it's a reminder to just, you do you. It says, oh honey, things will be okay. And then here is, don't be afraid to try, my darling. Two very important things I like to tell myself. But yeah. So this planter was also a reference off of plant. I think this was, I found this reference on Pinterest. And then this was just a very cute, like, cow planter, I think. But the point was kind of up here was where I really had fun. So initially I only did it with the whatchamacallit, the brush pen. It was only done with outlines, but I was like, well, then it's unbalanced because you have color on the bottom, but then you don't have any color on top. So this was me kind of just very loosely, like all the colors here aren't as intense as the pages before because it was just me kind of coloring very lightly. I love the effect of it. It's very soft, it's very gentle, but it's also very scribbly. Basically, November was a lot of experimenting with color and with mediums and how to use them. And I think this page kind of showed that as well because here you have Posca markers kind of in there. And then this was a mix of the Muji markers and also color pencil. It was fun, yeah. This was, so I wanted to draw something that was inspired by Taylor Swift all too well. And basically this flower, I can't remember what it's called, but I'll insert the name. But it's basically, the flower language is heartbreak or love in vain. And I just wanted to kind of break it down into the flowers and the leaves. And, you know, it's framing it in like different stories, different phases. And that line that breaks everyone's hearts, you kept me like a secret, but I kept you like an oath. Yeah. And this page was done, so when I got all these color pencils, I wanted to do something with them, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to draw. And I asked Instagram, and a lot of people said tropical plants, lotus leaves, scene outside your window, and then sea creatures. So that's what this is. It's a lot of plants, but then there's a jellyfish in between, and then in the back. So it was a light watercolor wash first, and then on top, it's all the colors that I got that day to kind of create that almost psychedelic background. We're almost nearing the end. Okay. So bugs. I've been drawing bugs digitally. I've never drawn them traditionally, and I wanted to try it. And this was the week where I was doing a lot of watercolor and color pencils, and I wanted to do that for bugs as well. I didn't want to stick to like the normal like brownness of the bugs. So these were me being liberal with bugs, and I think these two are my favorite, and this longhorn is a third favorite. And what's different, this one is, so all the lining done on this is actually done by a glass pen, and it was basically me trying to see if the ink would react well with the waxiness of the color pencils, which I think it did all right. Like, I think it's just fun, so that will give you more, that'll give me more liberty and freedom and bandwidth in different like colors to line. This page was also, it's a sign of how I'm being like not careful with my sketchbook anymore. So this was basically a wash of 2 different fountain pen inks, and then I used a glass pen above it to kind of line all these leaves that I had sketched. But as you can see, it's not reacting well. Like the bleed was hideous. So even though I powered through, it was like, these are notes that like fountain pen ink sucks. All right on watercolor though, because the blue was watercolor. And then the bleed, sad face. So yeah, at this point I was just having more fun. I was using my sketchbook as a place to experiment, and it was actually the thing that I needed to have a better relationship with the sketchbook. Yeah. This was a sketch that I did. I wanted to have like the cylinder shape on it. I think the base color for this was also watercolor. I'm not entirely sure for this one. This is a quote, again, from Taylor Swift, "Darling, let's run from it all," from her Volt track. And yeah, this page was, again, watercolor and sketch pencils. Watercolor and sketch pencils. Watercolor and color pencils. So the watercolor base was a very light green, and then also some yellow. And then it was just me being more free with the line work. It's a brush pen. And this page was basically a watercolor swatch. This sketchbook actually handles watercolor really well. It doesn't blend as well as you would with watercolor paper. But as you can see here, it actually does quite well. It's me experimenting with color. And this is one of my favorite illustrations. So this is done also in, let me see. So this bit was gouache. I think the base color was done in gouache and watercolor. And then I used color pencils in similar shades to kind of add more dimension to it. And what I did different this time was using color pencils to line, but also using a similar color based on, so up here was done in red, here was done in blue and purple, which I think just adds that softness to it compared to like using the same color over and over. And then I really had fun with this scissors. So I initially wanted to draw metal, but then metal's really hard to draw, so I basically just went in with like all these different colors. Now it has like a chrome look, and it's unlined. So I just love the effect of this one. I think this is one of my favorite illustrations as well. I feel like I say that every couple of pages. But this was just a fun experiment, and I think it really paid off. And so this was actually the last illustration I did. I actually did the pear first. And it was also a study in, yeah, again, the alcohol markers. And then watercolor, not watercolor, alcohol markers and color pencil on top. Then Poscas. And this was kind of experimenting with how, like, white pear, like the fruit of the pear, the whiteness of the inside of the pear, like how I would draw that without using lines. I think it did quite well for this one. It was just fun to do. And then this was the last page. So I really like kind of the roundness and the fluffiness of this flower here. And I wanted to do it again, see if I could recreate it in ink. So I tried it here. And it could be better. I think too much was going on in the center here. I was trying the dotted technique, but then also adding simple like lines. I think too much was done here. So I recreated it again. I sketched it again in like pencil, and it's nice. I think there are some illustrations that just work better with color, and then others that do better with ink. And yeah, so that's it. That's the end of my sketchbook. And you know, this has been with me for a year, over a year. And you can kind of see like how the styles change throughout my relationship with sketchbooks. And I don't think it started out that healthy. Everything had to be perfect, had to be neat. I didn't allow myself room to practice, to experiment. Whereas in the back, kind of starting in the last third, was kind of where I really let loose with it. And I had just more fun. There wasn't any stress connected to building the perfect sketchbook. And I just think that a lot of my pages here are ones that bring me joy when I look at them. And even in the pages itself, like, you can kind of see the different experiments that I did even within a month, and how I tried a lot of different things. And, you know, that's made me really proud of myself. And I think that's what your sketchbook should be like. There are some pages that you'd rather not look at, but even in those pages, you can learn from it all. And yeah, so that's my sketchbook tour. I currently have 4 to 5 other sketchbooks that I'm also using. But yeah, I hope that you like it. And if there is anything that you'd like to see, or any comments you might have, just let me know. But yeah, bye.